happening is that at the end of each financial year, that year's debit or credit balance has just been put onto the balance sheet. So you have this rolling surplus or deficit on at the end of any given year. They should have been netted off to the next year's special expense area or charge, sorry. So I then go on through page 47, giving some potential options on how to deal with these surpluses or deficits. And if you can move forward to page 49, my recommendation is shown there at paragraph 3.7. In the intervening paragraphs, I've sort of picked out a few examples of what the impact of such things would be, what charges would be, whether we would recover a debit charge, which is the more difficult one, over 1 year or over 3 years. So my conclusion at paragraph 3.7 is that for Market Harborough, the balance remains, for potentially the intention of financing the cost for the Bowls Pavilion and Green in the Welland Park. With regard to current debit balances, I'm suggesting here that you might want to spread that recovery over a couple of years. With regard to future credit and debit balances, we should be doing this a bit like we do for the collection from surplus or deficit that goes. We predict it at Q3 what it's going to be at the outturn, and if it's going to be forecasting a deficit position, we record that and then apply it the following year to recover it. That's my suggestion for those. Of course, you're willing to come up with another, but that seemed an equitable basis to me to do that. If we go over the page to page 50, this is the significant part, I feel, of this report, even though I'm not demeaning the previous section, but that can be dealt with from an accounting basis. But here is a bit more deep dive into what has actually been charged. So I have no idea of the history of what has happened here. It was way before I joined the authority. But I will say every year since, members have seen quite clearly the special expense areas that have been charged and what they have been charged for. And that's been approved at the February council meeting every year since the policy has been approved. What I have established, though, is that in respect of grounds maintenance, that the complete charge that the council bears for grounds maintenance has not been effectively recharged to special expense areas. So if you would like to move to the big table that's in page 51, well, first of all, I will apologise. I've headed that table at table 4. It should actually be, but in the previous paragraph at 3.10 it says table 5. It should be table 4 with that reference. So I do apologise about my typing, but there we go. Right. So the key issue here is the yellow column. Yellow column lists those parish or town areas just based on grounds maintenance only, what their charge currently would be. Okay. The green column is taking the full charge. First of all, for the parishes that are in the yellow block, you can see how it would change. But you also see there are a number of new charges per area. So you will go up, the number of special expense areas would increase from 12 to 32, which is quite a lump, quite a big jump. And you will see some quite significant movements. Now, where it shows 100%, that is basically because there was no charge the previous year. It could, in the Excel spreadsheet, it comes up with what they call a div adjustment, and I can't change it. Okay, so but I just put 100% in because it's a new charge. But if you look at line 8, Fleckney, it goes up from 20p to £8.86. Now, it is only £8.86, but in a formula basis, that ends up over nearly 4,500% increase. But that isn't the most, to me, the most significant issue. If you can look at line 4 for Bringhurst, here we have 24.3 Band D equivalent properties. Their special expense charge would be £50. Okay, that is based on expenditure of £1,200. Okay, so in totality, it's a very small amount gross. But if you're going to charge the policy in full, that number of Band D equivalent properties will get quite a hefty charge. And that's the principle applied all the way through. And the following pages gives you a few options of what we can do, the different ways we can treat it. You could, of course, do nothing. You could change the expenses policy as sort of listing on page 3. You can apply the policy in full, or you could taper this increase. Okay. At paragraph 3.14, though, I'm suggesting you probably should look to implement it, but you may want to spread it over a couple of years. What I will say is that you will notice at Appendix 3 there is an inequalities impact assessment. I felt that this was such an important issue that it is clear that there would be equalities impacts. And you do have the sort of odd situation where we have a number of parish areas that are currently being subsidised by everybody, and you have the opposite as well. So I think this is an issue that does need to be addressed. It's up to this panel to make a recommendation to Cabinet and to take forward. In that sort of my presentation, really. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Clive. So given the information that we've just been presented with, and I know members have had this information for a few days now, the recommendations that we present need to be in line with what the report is asking us for. So Councillor King, you had your hand up first, so if I come to you first, and then I'll come over to Councillor Graves and then Councillor Moder. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Clive. So look, this is incredibly disappointing to get this report. I'll be honest, I'm not a big fan of special expenses. I think they're a complete waste of time, personally. I don't like them. I think they just complicate council tax raising and confuse residents and everyone as to exactly what they're paying for, because we've got a general council tax and everyone assumes that things like essentially grass cutting is part of that. So then to be told, no, it's not part of it, you've got to pay on top, that kind of to me doesn't make a lot of sense. Apart from, so that's one thing I wanted to say. However, I understand we've got a policy and it's in place. But just going through this, so first of all, Clive, I'd just be grateful if you could just explain how it was established in autumn of 24 that since 2019 all current expense areas had built up these balances. What's concerning to me is this very excessive amount in the Market Harbour, you know, this positive balance. I heard what you said, but that does seem an excessive amount of money. Is that because, as you say, they were putting money to one side for projects, or is this because not enough money was being charged to that? I mean, there are some issues about why since 2016 hasn't this policy that was adopted by the council been implemented. That's something I think that maybe there should be a perhaps an audit, a special audit investigation into. But in terms of what's being proposed now, that wasn't very clear where the recommendation was going to, but you just said it's going to cabinet. I thought special expenses policy was decided by the council at the budget setting meeting in February. So I'm just trying to understand who we're recommending to what. And my personal thoughts, this is just a personal view, in the options relating to the credit balances, personal views that should be given back to residents. After all, it is their money. You know, they didn't opt to, they didn't know they were paying that money for redeveloping a bowls pavilion or bowls green. In terms of, but that's just say just a personal view. And in terms of the rest of it, I think when you start looking at the second bit that Clive was talking about, and I think what is it gets up to about 83% of all households will be a special expense household for grounds maintenance. I can make the argument, well, if it's nearly every household, or 4 in 5 that are part of the special expense regime, why isn't it just part of general council tax? Why are we actually charging a special expense for this? It should really be, if it's that volume of people, households that are involved, then to my mind, it'd be much more equitable if everyone was paying for it. I mean, if you start trying to break down the fact that householders in a particular area don't cover the costs of every service that we provide, well, that'll never be equitable. That's the whole point of taxation. Taxation doesn't pay for apothecated services because you can't do that. And this is the same here. You can't, what we're trying to do is say, well, it's fair because in that area, you will get the benefit of that service and it costs X to cut the grass in your area. So you're going to have to pay for it. But if you've only got, and that's fine where you've got enough houses to cover the costs of doing it. But in these really small areas, there aren't enough houses and it's disproportionate the cost. So therefore, you're sticking those householders with a much higher individual bill, which is why it comes back to the argument I would have is that it should be part of the general council tax rather than being a separated item. Now, I know people are going to say, but what about Market Harborough because it's unparished? Well, fine, but then what you could do is just simply change the special expense policy so that it's only the unparished area of Market Harborough, obviously subject to community governance review decision in the future, and it's the park, open spaces and recreation grounds in the unparished area of Market Harborough that makes a contribution or that residents are special expensed in. But that's, as I say, that's my sort of musings on it. I have no doubt other colleagues have got completely different view and would agree. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor King. I'll pass over to Councillor Graves and then Councillor Mulder and then Councillor Dr. Bremner.
Thank you, Chair. You'll be pleased to hear that my words will be limited by the poor status of my throat. So let me just have a sip of water to begin. I share a lot of views with Councillor King, but I do have a few different views as well. If I was a Star Wars fan, I would reminisce about the Clone Wars or something like that. I'm going to sit here as a 18-year councillor and remember the special expenses wars. I joke to some extent, but there have been some terse comments that Councillors Burrell and King, particularly as very long-serving members now of the council as well as myself, we remember all sorts of debates at full council and accusations of unfairness that have come from one or two particular councillors' mouths who I could tell you the names of. The reason the special expenses policy exists, and it goes back into time, and it existed way before 2007 when I came onto the council, is that there must be a reason for it, and the reason is fairness. And I'm going to point one figure out on the report to hopefully demonstrate the reason. And Councillor King's already alluded to, you know, maybe it's a Market Harborough only connected issue. So on page 56, I just want to point out the Market Harborough figure. It's on row 20 and it's in the middle green column, and it is £409,000. Now, admittedly, that's in the column called New Approach, but that is the amount of money actually spent in Market Harborough Town. If there was no special expenses policy, the rest of the district would be subsidising hugely the cost spent in Market Harborough. So it's just one figure pulled out. It's 2/3 of the whole cost of the whole analysis. So special expenses have been really debated over the years. But yes, I'm equally astounded that for 7 or so years, since the 2018-2019 year, that this has been done incorrectly. I have looked into special expenses considerably over the years. When I was on Cabinet, I did constantly say to officers and to the leader, can we look at special expenses? It doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel right. Please, can we have review? Please, can we have review? I was that child pulling on the genes of anyone who would listen, that we need to sort this. And I'm really pleased, and compliments to the Section 151 officer for a very good detailed set of figures and analysis, including the equalities due regard to quality analysis, which I've gone through as well. I'm really satisfied with the work done and the quality on the analysis. So credit where credit's due. But I am somewhat shocked that this wasn't picked up before, and it does raise the obvious question as to, well, is there another policy that's not being complied with? Because no councillors are responsible for not implementing policy. We decide policy and then we leave and go home, and there's an expectation in any council that policy will be adhered to. I share some views of Councillor King that should we be pulling in 80-90% of the parishes on a special expenses? I'm getting uncomfortable at that. There is some I have a lot of sympathy for the comment that some areas may require more money one year and less another. But the principal reason why special expenses was brought in was really only due to the big things. It was the fact that Market Harborough doesn't have a town council, therefore there's got to be some fairness in that and it's normally about £500,000 a year. You don't just get the district to subsidise £500,000. When I looked at special expenses for the first time in 2008, it wasn't £500,000, it was only about £250,000. And I discovered that a whole host of expenses were not included in special expenses. Now, fortunately, something amazing was about to happen. A 20 or 25-year leisure centre loan was about to expire, and special expenses Market Harborough was about to halve in the following year. It would have gone down from £60 to £30 Band D. So I used the opportunity, I noticed it, I spotted it. No one else appeared to have noticed it, although maybe the Section 151 officer Command Meta did at the time. So I said, well, let's use this opportunity, right? You don't want to halve this charge and then 2 years later say to residents in Market Harborough, we're trebling your special expenses parish precept equivalent. Let's just, a bit like Indiana Jones with his bag of sand, taking the gold thing. You do that precise swap, and you hope that the concrete thing that it's resting on will not notice. Now, obviously, we know what's going on. We then in 2010 implemented a new special expenses policy. It was renewed in 2016, but it brought about a dramatic level of fairness across the whole district, and a number of councillors who were unhappy were suddenly much happier. But saying that, what do we do now? Well, we have policies for a reason. I am inclined to say we need to adjust these in line with the recommendation in the report that the Section 151 officer has pointed us to. I'm minded to move towards agreeing that, because I don't like policies not being adhered to. I note the comment that it might require the policy to be renegotiated. best of luck at our full council at the moment of getting through a major, possibly contentious, big policy change. It's going to be easiest to just follow the policy that we have. I'm going to just go through briefly, if I may. Now, those are my main talking points. I did want to bring out a few points. If I could refer you to page 51, which is the very colourful page that Clive has already referenced. So again, line 20, Market Harborough. The way to work out what has been, and this moves on to something that Councillor King said, the way to work out what has not been billed to Market Harborough each year is you go to the orange column, you take out the £10.91 required adjustment, and you multiply that by the 9,952 houses, and you get just under £110,000 per year has not been billed correctly. Now, other places have not had certain amounts, Fleckney, Broughton Astley, Lutterworth, one of those is 10,000, one of them is 16,000, one of them I think is £35,000. But just in principle that, for example, over 7 years, Market Harborough has not paid under the policy what it should have done, which is about £750,000. Now, other areas maybe should have paid an extra 100,000, an extra 200,000. But obviously Market Harborough comes in for a bit of a kicking because it's the biggest and the most dramatic variance. But I do get really uncomfortable with a proposal to keep the, I'm going to use the word gift, of £350,000 because Market Harborough has underpaid special expense by 750. But there's a proposal for them to keep the 350. I'm really uncomfortable with that. It doesn't sit well. I don't mind a cabinet and a council having a debate and having a special suggestion to buy a bowls pavilion, redo a bowls pavilion. I don't have an issue with a proper debate and a proper decision, but I'm uncomfortable about. I just feel as if the special expenses are a bit manipulated. Let's give them the 350k still. We know they're 750k short, but that's one key figure that I got my calculator out to change. I think I'll stop there, Chair. If I could reserve the right to maybe pop back in a little bit later on, but that's my main blurb. But yes, I am more inclined to try to rectify this because the policy exists for a reason and it's about fairness and equity. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Graves. I'll come to Councillor Moder just if she's got any more Harrison Ford movie references. But can I just say, with the £750,000 underpayment for Market Harborough as a Market Harborough ward member, it would obviously be paid back quicker as well if they were being charged that £10.91.
Thank you, Chair. Mine's very, very short and sweet. Basically, I'm just a bit concerned about the inconsistencies over time, because if reviews aren't done regularly, then the charges that are being paid and asked for will be outdated. So I don't know how often that's happening, so that we're keeping on top of what we should be paying for.
Yeah, I think that's an important point that this is raised. I mean, this is obviously quite, I mean, it's been going on for 9 years, you know, looking at the review process. I think, you know, that probably needs to be something that we look at going forward.
I'll come back to
Oh, okay.
Question.
Right. Thank you. I'll go to Councillor Dr. Bremer.
I agree with some of the comments, both of Councillor Graves and King. I would make the comment about grass cutting, though, that it would only be on land that HDC own, probably, wherever that land is. I think there's as has been discussed, there's a lot can be discussed about timelines and reviews and numbers in different parts of the area that's been revealed. But I just want to come to the recommendation, and I think the recommendation is as balanced as it can be in the circumstances that we find ourselves in, including mince pie eating on the other side of the table. The balance has shifted. And I think it's right that Market Harborough pays for what they get, and it isn't shared out a lot across the district, because that's fair. But what I'm not quite so clear on it in terms of fairness is why do everybody in Market Harbour want the Bulls Pavilion redeveloped or the green area in Welland Park? Certainly the Bulls Pavilion, not everybody uses the Bulls Pavilion. The green area in Welland Park, I could see why. It's a destination play area within the park and a cafe, and that's the environment. But the Bulls Pavilion? Shouldn't the members of the Bulls Pavilion be raising the money for their pavilion? That seems an odd pick out to me. Other than that, I'm happy with the recommendations, but I would question the Bulls Pavilion.
Councillor Graves, you just raised your hand there.
Thank you. I wasn't expecting to come back so quickly, but I did forget to make one point earlier, and I think it's a reasonable forward-looking point to make, which is in connection with a potential new town council for Market Harbour. The potential, likely, I don't know. I don't live here, so I'm not vibed in with the street view. The costs of a potential town council are likely to form part of the debate. And I want to see a district council being as honest as it can be about the costs. And if the special expense is currently £100,000 lower than it should be, then you've got an extra £100,000 of difficulty when you eventually have to pitch the truthful. Someone puts an FOI, I mean, what are the real costs? Well, you're not going to put the £300,000 as the real cost. The real cost is 410, as the Section 151 officer has calculated in that relevant section that I pulled out. So I don't live in Market Harbour. I would be keen to see a good vote and a good pitch made for a town council, but you've got more difficulty if you keep suppressing the cost low, because it's then a much bigger jump for an actual town council cost. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor King.
Yeah, I just wanted to come back in an additional point. So if you think about all services the council offers, we do homelessness. So some parts of the district have more homelessness than other parts of the district. Do we prorate those parts of the district for the fact that those areas have homelessness more than other parts of the district? And the answer is we don't. Okay, we charge a uniform rate across the whole of the district, council tax. Everyone pays it, and it pays towards a service which is drawn upon more predominantly by people in main towns, Market Harbour, Lutterworth, Broughton Astley. Many villages do not draw on that service at all, ever. And they contribute an awful lot of money because they tend to be more expensive council tax property rated properties, and yet to be even more expensive properties with the super council tax that the government's going to levy in the future. A small number will, although we won't get the money apparently. So I think there is, to me, that's my starting point, is if, well, all the other services we do. So here we're talking about grounds maintenance, which we operate over a big areas, not just in one locality. We can see now it's in lots of areas where we operate grounds maintenance. Okay, 83% of the district council taxpayers are going to be making a contribution to that service. So my argument would be, well, why are we doing that? If 83% of, we're going to ask 83% to make a contribution, so surely that should be included in the overall council tax. And I understand the point about Market Harbour, it's full costs, etc. So that's the kind of fly in the ointment, so to speak. But you're never going to get away from that. Special expenses is this kind of notion, oh, well, that because they're getting more, well, there's more people live here, so you are going to get more. But then that goes back to the housing type argument that I put, that there's more people rely on housing need here, so therefore more money spent on housing need here. We don't put that in special expenses. And lots of other services we don't put in special expenses, even though the need and demand is greater in places like Market Harbour, Lutterworth, and in some of the bigger communities rather than others. So I think I could put that as a counter argument to the, well, we should just stick with what we've got. I didn't, as I said earlier, I'm not a big fan of it. I think it is not the right way to go. I mean, really, and I've never said I was against the town council either. So just to be clear, and you know, yeah, it probably needs a town council and then a transfer of responsibilities of certain areas of activity. So then that gets taken away from the district, but we're not in that position at the moment. So that's my view. As I said, others have got a different view. So I think that's where I am with it. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor King. Councillor Graves, you wanted to come back?
Yeah, no, this is the good value of a debate. You know, just pinging off of that comment from Councillor King. I used the link that Clive very carefully put on page 1 of the equity analysis to print my own copy off of the 2016 special expenses policy, which the most useful clause at the bottom is summarised in paragraph. Yeah, if maybe you could go to the end of page 46, just before section 3 details. It's little 3, the council services. I mean, this is the nutshell of the current special expenses policy, and it is very neatly summarised. Anyone who's gone to a parish or is a parish councillor or was a parish councillor will immediately recognise that a very large part of parish council money is on cemetery allotments, Harbour and Bloom equivalent, you know, sort of a local festival, your planter boxes, any little orchard. The next one, Harbour Town Centre support, anything the parish council might do in the village centre or town centre. It's Lutterworth, Broughton Astley, Fleckney, Kibworth. And the last one, park, open spaces and recreation grounds. Many parishes and towns have their own larger play areas that they're very proud of. I'm not talking about the little ones that are littered in all our new housing estates, which under planning and sustainability rules we have to provide. I'm talking about the big one that's been there 20, 30, 40, 50 years. So that paragraph is very neat. So, for example, homelessness provision just wouldn't feature because parishes don't look at homeless provision. So I think that's an easy way of dealing with that one. But yeah, it's worded like this because it looks at what the parishes and towns do and says that's what it's governing. In terms of the detail around the edges, what was, sorry, the fourth town with the £50 Bringhurst. I am really uncomfortable about that, and definitely I would agree with a 2-year phased approach, Chair. £25 a year if it was minded, but I think we need. I mean, with local government review coming, it doesn't seem worth rehashing the whole special expenses and having another 3 meetings on it. I would tend to agree with what Councillor Bremner said. I think it is about the best approach to just adjust it to put the fairness through. I think that's the best thing we can do. I'm struggling to come up with any other arrangements. There is the benefit to closing the gap between the current market harbour special expense and the potential town council. That is a forward-looking point. But yeah, I just wanted to make that point about why it exists and remind the panel of these are the core parish council cost areas. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Scott.
Consider that the special expenses review should include all applicable grounds maintenance work as indicated in this report and a 2-year taper fee.
Thank you. Clive, if I could pass over to you to address any of the comments that have been made and just provide a bit of clarity.
Yeah. So I think everybody sort of has got it now that it's only certain services that are charged under special expense, and it is those that are responsibility of a parish council but not provided by that particular parish council. In respect of Market Harbour, and the references to Bowles Pavilion, that is what my understanding was, that what the set aside was for. Okay. Okay. So when the Market Harbour Special Expenses Group set up, they were told that as well. So that was my understanding. Okay. Now, whether that changes or not when it goes forward, that point can be discussed at that point in time. Okay. As one would expect, right? So, in regard the Bowls Pavilion, the Bowls Pavilion is not run by the Bowls Club at all at this point in time. It is owned by the council. Okay, and it is a derelict site. Effectively should be knocked down and rebuilt to be a facility in Welland Park, and that's what the idea of the money was. Councillor Moder asked how frequently are special expenses reviewed. Of the 12 that are currently done, it is done annually. It doesn't move much, but that isn't strictly true, and I'll explain why. Because primarily for the most of the cost that is built into special expenses, it is works on grounds maintenance. Okay, and that is what is done by our contractor, FCC. So basically it moves, generally speaking, by the inflation amount per annum. Now, there are some other costs for like harbours, such as in the town centre and stuff like that. That does vary a little bit. Where we get the variance in the actual rather than the budget is the fact that sometimes we have to do more cuts, or an area takes more work. So the cost that the contractor charges us goes up. The unit cost stays roughly the same because it's only gone up by inflation, but the cost goes up, or we do less work. So that's how we end up with this higher cost or lower cost, and hence why we've ended up with these negative or credit balances. Does that explain? But the unit cost is only generally going up by inflation each.
Thanks, Claire. Can I just come back with one other question? So I understand that, but then do we still go out to use the same people, or are we looking for the best?
So for grounds maintenance, it is our contractor, FCC. They provide that grounds maintenance work for us. Okay, and it's part of that contract that we're currently going out to procurement for. You know the waste contract. It is everyone knows it as the waste contract. Well, it's actually waste, streets, and grounds. That's what the contract is for. Somebody mentioned about giving the credits back to. Oh, sorry, I've turned off. Sorry. Somebody mentioned about putting the giving credits back to people. Well, the approach that I'm proposing will do that. So if there is a credit balance at the end of the year, that credit balance will be then set against the next year's charge, and likely would reduce that year's charge. So they are direct. They would directly, and only those residents in that area would directly get the benefit. Of course, the contra is also true. If for a particular year the cost was higher in that year, in the following year we have to recover that extra that will be charged against the next year. So, but that is exactly how the collection fund that does council tax generally works. We forecast in the January time what we think the year end's going to be. Okay. And in the budget, you will see a line at the bottom called collection fund surplus or deficit. So at the last budget, you were forecasting an under recovery. So there was an extra cost put into the budget, and it's exactly the same principle. Okay. I think we talked about homelessness because I think that's all the sort of issues sort of themed together. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, it will require a proposer and a seconder, or sure. Actually, can I just state the recommendations and we can have a vote on each one, or there are, yeah. So just to before we do that though, obviously I know special expenses can be a contentious issue, and we're not voting on special expenses. We're looking at what we can do with the situation that we've got in our hand. Yeah, if you could, Clive, that would be very beneficial. Thank you.
So if you'd like me to just explain again the recommendations that are on page 44. Okay, they are split into two blocks. So block 1 is looking at reserve balances and how we will deal with that, and block 2 is looking at the grounds maintenance works. So looking at the reserve balances, this is split into 3 areas. So we have the current credit balances and the current debit balances. In respect of the current debit balances, Roman numeral 1, for Market Harbour to keep that 350 on the balance sheet to be used for the expected capital expense. In respect of all the other credit balances, these to be set off against the 26-27 cost that will be next year. So if said parish area had got a cost of 50 grand and the accumulated balance at the end of this financial would be 10 grand, I would set that 10 grand off against the 50, so their charge would be 40,000. Okay. In respect of the debit balances, little Roman numeral 2, we would set that, recover that over a 2-year period. Why 2 years? The idea being then by the end of the life of this authority, it will be recovered. Okay. Roman numeral 3 is in respect of the process going forward for any credit and debit balances that may appear on an annual basis. So the end of quarter 3, i.e. the end of December, a little piece of work will be done to forecast what the year-end position will be, and that's what will be recorded as the forecast outturn. So if a particular area was going to, once again, forecast a credit balance of 10 grand. In the report that went to council in February, there will be now a more detailed analysis of special expense and how we're dealing with that forecast, and we would credit it. Now, in reality, when we get into that year, that may not be the situation, but we are taking a more scientific approach to the recovery. So that's my recommendation for reserve balances.
Would it be pertinent then, now that you've just gone through that one, to have a vote on whether we recommend those recommendations?
Yeah.
Would there be any? Thank you, Councillor Dr. Bremner. Thank you, Councillor Graves. So all those in favour of accepting those recommendations, if you'd like to vote now. That is fine. And all those against? And those to abstain? Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for explaining that. Thank you very much, councillors. So we'll now move to the second recommendation.
Okay, this is in respect of grounds maintenance works. So the whole point here being that to apply the policy in full, and there are options here whether to apply it in full or whatever. I'm suggesting to get rid of this unfairness that there is, and which is demonstrated in the equalities impact assessment, we should be applying the policy in full. But for some areas, it is quite a jump. For others, it's quite small. But I think it would be fairer to probably phase that over a couple of years. And that is what the recommendation there is. Before we just take a vote, I know what somebody asked and I didn't address. Where's this recommendation going to? The way the special expenses works is that it is recommended to Cabinet and then they go to council. And it's exactly the same process as setting the council tax. Only council can agree the setting of the council tax, but cabinet make a recommendation to council on the council tax as they would for this. So this recommendation here then will go to cabinet. This is what overview and scrutiny are suggesting should be the way forward to deal with this issue. So does that make sense? Thank you.
Thank you. So on the second recommendation, do we have a proposer? Or do we, thank you, Councillor Graves. And is there a seconder for this? Thank you, Councillor Scott. And so all those in favour of accepting the second recommendation? Thank you. And all those against? And any abstentions? Thank you very much. Thank you very much, councillors. Those recommendations will be passed to cabinet at their next convenience. Okay, we are now moving on to item 7, which is the work plan. What I will do is I will just ask if anybody has any queries about the work plan. It is on page 75 of the report. You can see the various, well, actually, page 75 is in the past now. Page 76 is the current meeting. So page 77 is the future meetings. You will see on the future meeting on page 77, there is the follow-up from our previous meeting about the voluntary sector grants as well. So that is being brought forward to that meeting. Councillor Graves.
Just to reiterate comments that have already been made about the number of meetings we're having and some of the meat on the bones of what we're discussing. I don't feel as if the forthcoming number of meetings are enough. I think this evening has demonstrated that occasionally we get something really important coming across. There's some excellent people in here around the full table, officers and members with experience, and having a good debate like we've had tonight with lots of people bringing in their own experiences is valuable. But I don't think there's enough meetings coming up now. I haven't got a solution. I haven't got a date or anything to propose. I'd rather it be considered by you as chair and by Democratic Services about the comments earlier about melding our comments. Councillor King said that at county they feed back on the quarterly budget to actual and it goes to cabinet within days. Anyway, that's just my view on the sort of looks like there's lots of things coming up at the 19th of March meeting, but that's the only one on the horizon.
Yeah, so unfortunately it is the last one of this year. I wanted to say academic year then, but I'm in the wrong job, aren't I? Sorry. So, Councillor King.
Yeah, so in the next report, which is the recommendation, you'll see in Appendix A, 19th of June, the very point that we made earlier was raised back in June. It's an action here for the officers to deal with about the alignment of meetings. So we've actually raised this previously at a previous meeting, and it seems that nothing much has happened to sort it out. So, you know, that's 6 months ago. You know, that's quite concerning that we've got this kind of nothing happening, you know.
Yeah, unfortunately, because of the scheduling of the meetings at the outset of the initial council.
With respect, Chairman, the scheduling of those meetings can be changed.
Yes,
we've had plenty of council meetings to change that.
Yeah, but you know, the conversations that have been had are looking to resolve this matter.
Well, and I also remind you of the leader's commitment, which he made back in May 2023, that he was absolutely committed to scrutiny and strengthening scrutiny. And all I've seen so far is no strengthening of scrutiny, and I've seen no improvements. But that's a commitment he made to us all over 2.5 years ago. So I'm just putting it out there. So you might want to pick that up with him.
I do have Leah who wants to come back on something relating to portfolio holdings. Is that right?
Yeah. Of it, I mean, it might be helpful if I mention as well, because I know you were talking about lots of business and lots of items. We are working on developing a new form that councillors will have available to them. So if you've got something you want to put on the scrutiny work programme, you can fill in a form and then we can take it to the next meeting. We can talk about it and look at how to programme that in, extra meetings, that type of thing. So that'll be coming forward. I'm also very conscious your agenda is very big in March, as was just highlighted, and we could look to circulate some options for dates for an additional meeting in April, if you would like us to, so that we can split that into two and have some good long debates on the items there. And the final thing is portfolio holder briefing. So I know there was some concern at the start about the amount of time it was taken, also that there was quite a lot of ground we covered and there wasn't always the ability to answer the questions. So I'm thinking in future we could adopt an approach where we try and get the briefing out a bit earlier, even ahead of the agenda. And members could have a few days in which to look at it and highlight particular key themes they might want to ask questions about. And then we can try and ensure that the relevant officers are also in the meeting to support the portfolio holder in answering some of the questions around key themes you might have. Might still have stuff crop up on the day, but it might really help with making sure you get the answers you want.
Thank you, Leah. Councillor King.
Yeah, thanks for that, Leah. But actually, that is what scrutiny is supposed to do, and it's down to the head of paid service to sort this out and make sure sufficient resources are allocated to ensure the proper democratic discharge, the proper democratic functioning of the council. So earlier on, we talked about all these officers that you're hiring to sort out empty houses or some other stuff. But what we're not talking about is the officers that you're hiring to sort out scrutiny, ensure the democratic functioning of the council is working properly. And we know that there's been problems with that. So what I'm concerned about is we say one thing and we're doing exactly the opposite. So coming back to what you're talking about, the next meeting is the 19th of March. I don't think that's a particularly onerous agenda. I'm not sure why we need a presentation from voluntary sector grants organisations. Appreciate that was at the meeting back in September when I wasn't here. Don't really know what that's for, but coming back to the Q3 financial performance, what's that? Is that to the end of December? We're getting that nearly at the end of the financial year. I mean, to me, that's an absolute waste of time. Because you're so far after the end of the quarter, you're nearly towards the end of the fourth quarter. I just think that's absolutely so academic. We should be having a meeting much sooner than March. It's too late. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Through Chair, I get your concern, but we're then in the middle of the budget cycle, and the main financial stuff then is the budget, and you do have in the late January the review of the joint. Sorry, get my teeth right. The joint scrutiny on the budget, and then you're into budget formal approval in February. So it does end up very cramped. It's a difficult situation, that one.
Councillor Grace.
I fully appreciate. I mean, I've seen some of these intricate date plans that Clive was mentioning. However, I would just go back to the peer review that we had, and they just did stress that really, I don't think they made it optional. I think they kind of said we've got to do it. So, I mean, I hear what Clive's saying. I know it's difficult. The times and dates are a bit packed, but I think somehow we've got to review the figures up to the end of December, reviewing them nearly 3 months later. I'm not comfortable with that. It doesn't happen in commerce. I don't think councils, I don't think we're less important than business. I don't think councillors are less important than directors. We're just on a par. I just wonder if maybe Leah could have a look at the schedule, see if there's anything possible. I'd just be really grateful. Thank you.
Thank you. Leah, did you want to come in there?
Yeah, I'm very happy to work with officers, look at scheduling, send options out to yourselves once we've had a look at what we can do within the timetables concerned. Never have a problem doing that. I'm also very happy if you do have ideas about how you think things could be improved, ideas you'd like to see, things you'd like to take forward. I am happy to look at all those things. I can't say what's happened in the past, but you know, I'm keen to look to how we support you.
Thank you, Leah. Okay, so in terms of the work plan then, at present, that is the work plan, if that is agreed with all, until we get any alternative dates to move forward with a earlier Q3 review. Thank you. The final item on the agenda is the second to last item on the agenda is the recommendation tracker. You'll see that it's been included in this report. I think this is the first time that we've had this in our scrutiny group, looking at the decisions that have been taken forward by Cabinet from the decisions that have been passed through. So that is something to note moving forward, that we'll get feedback from the decisions that we've made in the scrutiny meetings. Has anybody got any comments on that? Councillor Scott.
I think it refers to what was said by my colleague here, that earlier on that we were looking at things after the event. Exactly the same is going to happen in this in terms of this as well, that the tracker says something, but it might not, it certainly won't be applicable because of the reasoning was given earlier.
For the financial reports?
Yeah.
Yes, agreed. Okay, there's no other comments. Number 9, any other business? No? But I just wanted to ask. In which case, thank you very much, councillors. It is, what time is it? 9:25. It's 9:10. Oh, it's 9:10. Sorry, the computer in front of me says 9:25.